watching World 360 with me, Akanksha Swaroop. Former US President Donald Trump is expected to surrender anytime next week after his Georgia indictment. From boom to bust, is it the end of China's growth story? And we find out why India and Russia's moon missions are critical for space policy and geopolitics. But first up are the headlines.
Russia has once again accused Ukraine of another drone attack on Moscow's financial building. There was no immediate comment from Ukraine, but officials in Kyiv have never formally acknowledged launching attacks on targets in Moscow. As US presidential candidate race heats up, Indian-American Vivek Ramaswamy has emerged as one of the strong Republican contenders challenging former US President Donald Trump. He is employing a unique strategy combining rare solution to the Ukraine-Russian war and his deeply ingrained Hindu faith. As China's economic crisis mounts, at the center of the deep debt hole are the property giants whose debt defaults have surged slowdown, with the real estate giant Evergrande now filing for bankruptcy protection. China and India have held new round of border talks days before Chinese President Xi and Prime Minister Modi head for the BRICS summit in Johannesburg. The commander-level talks is part of a continued effort to ease a 3-year-old standoff along the line of actual control.
With that, let's deep dive first on our top story that is coming from the United States. Former US President Donald Trump has abruptly cancelled his proposed press conference at which he claimed he was going to unveil a report that would clear him of any wrongdoing and charges he tried to interfere with the presidential election in Georgia. Now, this comes after the Georgia grand jury indicted the former US president concerning the efforts to overturn the 2020 election results in the Peach State. Meanwhile, police in Georgia are investigating online threats to members of a grand jury that voted to indict Mr. Trump and 18 of his allies accused of conspiring to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election in the state. They have been ordered to surrender for arrest by 25th of August, where they will be booked into Fulton County Jail for mugshots and fingerprints to be taken just like any other criminal defendant. And that will also include Donald Trump. The big question we are asking is, can Trump still run for presidency even if he's convicted? And for that, let me also introduce my guest. I'm joined in by Amy Tarkanian, who's a Republican strategist and joining me live. Many thanks to you, Amy, for joining in. Now, Amy, after each criminal indictment of former US president, pundits have said something to the effect of this is the worst indictment yet. Many are now saying that Trump's fourth indictment, in fact, poses the greatest legal risk to him. Do you agree?
Yes, and the reason being is you now have a number of individuals who were so-called co-conspirators or co-defendants. So now there's not just President Trump involved, you have 18 others that have been indicted as well. This has been an over 2-year investigation that has been taking place, and so they have been talking with numerous individuals who have been connected with the numerous scenarios that are included in this indictment. The one that could be left up to interpretation is the phone call that he made to the Secretary of State of Georgia asking to find roughly 11,700 votes. That could have been either a candidate who was in panic and just talking out loud, or it could have been a candidate who truly was putting the pressure to find these votes to change the outcome. Now, the one area that I believe he's going to find a tough time wiggling out of is the fake elector scheme. And here in the state of Nevada, we are one of 7 states that actually participated in that, unfortunately. So our leadership in the state party, they did present 6 fake electors, right, and 2 of them were subpoenaed and they were granted limited immunity. So, that tells you right there that there was coordination to some extent, whether if it was directly with President Trump or President Trump's handlers or the people that he sent off to go and do the dirty work. There's going to be, I think, a lot of communication that's going to come out that will be damning.
All right.
And then you have the former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, who also has been very silent, but has now requested that this be moved from a state court to a federal court in hopes that they can have a larger juror pool to select from rather than just from Fulton County itself.
All right, Amy, I think we'll have to leave it at that. Many thanks to you for joining in with your precious inputs on World 360. Now, Indian American Vivek Ramaswamy has emerged as one of the frontrunners in the Republican race for the 2024 presidential elections. Now, this comes at a very significant timing. Remember, the Republicans are on the lookout for a friendly alternate to Donald Trump. He's a 37-year-old biotech entrepreneur and is the third Indian American to directly challenge former US President Donald Trump in the run-up to the 2024 elections. Now, some of his recent comments on the Russia-Ukraine war have already raised eyebrows. He said he will make a deal with Putin to weaken Moscow's ties with China. He also further added if the US commits to not supporting the admission of Ukraine into NATO, Putin will have no reason to be in a military partnership with China. Ramaswamy's Hindu faith is the front and center in his Republican campaign. Meanwhile, he has also got a big endorsement from Twitter's former boss Elon Musk as a very promising candidate. And what will this mean for the Republican primary race? Let me also bring in my guest today. I'm also joined in by Puneet Ahluwalia, who's the former Republican candidate for Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. Thank you so much, Puneet, for joining in. Now, let's also talk about weighing in on what Ramaswamy's foreign policy views are. He has said that he would go for total decoupling with China if he comes to power. He's against US aid to Ukraine, so much so he believes, like Nixon soured relations between China and Russia, current day US should also do that. In fact, he says that if he comes to power, he would ease Moscow's economic burden and not offer NATO membership to Ukraine. How do you view his foreign policy views, in fact?
Well, again, as I said, he's trying to go on to the centrist position, which is, again, a unique idea which he's trying to bring into the Republican Party, because we usually tend to run and win the base first and then move to the center. But he's kind of leading with that fact. But I think on the international front, I don't agree with his perspective on his stance on China and on Russia, because there's some bad act. You see, you have to realize China is we have an issue with China. It'll always remain, but we also recognize that China is an important player on the global stage. At the same time, we have to find a way to mend fence with Russia. And the reason why I say that is because I feel that we need to find a way to neutralize this war, because it's impacting the entire world. And I think the weakness of Biden has led to all these incidents. Had been a strong Republican president, we would not see Putin making an engagement into Ukraine. But we need to support Ukraine. We have to have the free will of the people prevail. And if Ukraine wants to be part of NATO, well, let them be part of NATO. It is Putin's issue. And we will support Taiwan without any exception. And that's the fact how it remains. We have actors who want to turn democracies or sham democracies into despots or autocracies.
All right. Now, Puneet, let's also talk about these American Indians who've been making it to the presidential race. Apart from Ramaswamy, two other Indian Americans, Nikki Haley and Harshvardhan Singh, have thrown their hat in the ring as well. What does that mean for the Indian American diaspora in the US, and who, in your view, will be in the reckoning next year?
I'm glad that the large Indian American community or leaders are jumping in, but I would like the community to also participate. I'm running for a local board election in Fairfax County, which is one of the richest counties in the United States. I have got very limited Indian American support, because even though in my district we have the largest Indian American diaspora who are very rich, very successful, but when it comes down to writing checks, they just want to basically be more gravitated towards maybe presidential or congressional elections, but most people don't recognize all politics is local. Till you don't participate in local politics or in politics in general, by voting and supporting, you're not really counted. And Indian community, again, proud Indian American, I would really urge that the community have to participate. But I know Hirsch, God bless him, but I know Nikki also. I've now met Vivek. Exceptional for our community in the last 10 years, how we really matured and graduated and running from all facets, from, I ran for lieutenant governor, and now we have a lot of people running for various positions, which is a great sign, which is a maturity of a community.
Right.
But we have still a long way to go. We have to adopt the American values and American culture. That's most important. It's just not about running for office. It's about making this country our homeland and be proud Americans.
Absolutely. In fact, with 3 Indian Americans now in this race, it'll be very interesting to see who finally makes it to July of next year. Many thanks to you, Puneet Ahluwalia. It was a pleasure to have you on my show. And with that, let's now bring you the latest from China. The country is struggling to get back on its feet after Beijing's authoritarian policies and draconian lockdowns have taken a toll on its economy. As the Chinese real estate giant Evergrande files for bankruptcy in the United States, we debate how the sector's its deep dive is driving the country's economic slowdown. According to China's July economic data, consumer prices have declined for the first time in 2 years. The official consumer price index fell by 0.3%. New bank loans also fell to a 14-year low in July. Home prices fell for the first time this year. Industrial production increased 3.7% lower than the estimate. Now, retail sales the growth has been slowed down by 2.5%, worse than 4%, which was the forecast. And growth in fixed assets investment has weakened to 3.4%. Property investment contracted 8.5%, which was the worst this year. The urban jobless rate has risen to 5.3% from 5.2% in June. China has in fact also stopped publishing its youth unemployment data as well. Why is China trying to hide its data sets? And not just that, what is causing this crisis in China's real estate property sector? Let's try and get in a sense of perspective. And for that, let me introduce my guest today. I'm joined in by Robert Ross, who's the non-resident fellow at Quincy Institute. Many thanks to you, Robert, for joining in. Now, first, it was zero COVID. Now, even when the Chinese economy is finally transitioning out of the pandemic, we are learning of their property crisis, their bad debt, plus their population is also on the decline. Can the country even hope to return to sustained high growth, or is this China's high growth era coming to an end now?
I think the Chinese economy is suffering from 4 distinct problems. One, of course, is the distinct impact of Xi Jinping's COVID policy, which severed supply chains between China and the world. So now China has to recover those supply chains, recover those relationships. But you have a problem with U.S. policy toward China has reduced business interest in investing in China. You have a global recession that's undermined Chinese exports. And you have the Chinese people themselves that are unwilling to spend. So this is going to be a protracted process of recovering from this very low growth. Having said that, yes, I agree with you. The period of the Chinese miracle is over. And I think we should not expect 6% growth even for a long time, if ever again. But I think we can expect eventually China to return to 4 to 5% growth. And of course, compared to the advanced industrial world, Europe, the United States, Japan, that's a very high rate of growth. So once China recovers its growth, we can expect the rise of China to continue.
Right. Robert, then the other question that comes to mind is, can Beijing's economic struggles be an opportunity for New Delhi, and how? Or are there areas where India is still lagging behind?
Well, yes, you're right that businesses that have long invested in China are looking for other places to move their operations. Vietnam is a consideration, as well as India. I think India's problem remains one of infrastructure development. The reliability of Indian infrastructure, whether it's electricity, whether it's railroads, whether it's highways, remains in doubt. And so that will continue to constrain investment in India until these changes develop.
All right, Robert, it was a pleasure to have you on my show. Thank you so much for sharing your precious inputs. And with that, let's now shift focus over to two significant lunar missions, one of India and Russia. Many are calling it a race to the moon's lunar south pole with Chandrayaan 3 and Luna 25. The question that stands in front of us is who will win this new space race, and more specifically, what exactly is the driving force to the moon? Now, on 11th of August, Russia launched its first moon landing spacecraft in 47 years and joined India in its race for the moon. Today, also ISRO released fresh images of the separation of the lander and propulsion module. Was the timing planned? That's also one question everybody's asking, mostly not, but now the entire world has eyes set on these two spacecraft. If successful, we will not have just one, but two vehicles on moon competing to find water and other useful minerals. But before that, let's also discuss what's driving the new race to the moon. And for that, let me introduce my guest today. I'm joined in by Dr. Suresh Naik, who's the former group director of ISRO. Many thanks to you, Dr. Naik. Dr. Naik, there's a lot of talk about the differing arrival times of both the lunar missions, that of India and Russia as well. What's ironic is the fact that Russia's lunar mission took off much after Chandrayaan, and yet it is expected to make a touchdown before Chandrayaan. Having said that, what explains these differing arrival times of both the lunar missions?
Actually, I will put it this way, that Russia is arriving at the moon much faster. That is, I think, in about 6 days, whereas India took more than a month, okay,
right,
and to arrive at the moon. So this actually is because there are two reasons. One is India's rocket is not as powerful as Soyuz, that is the Russian rocket.
Right.
And India wants to take a safe way to moon. Safer way to moon is to keep it in the Earth's orbit, increase its orbit by sling action due to gravity assist of the Earth, and raise it to beyond actually the balance point between Earth and Moon's gravity, and then give it a boost so that it starts its journey towards Moon. Because in order to start the journey, the velocity has to be about more than 11.2 kilometers per second. So India has designed it, the whole trajectory in such a way, and its advantage is it becomes a low-cost mission, and India always prefers its mission to be low-cost and safer. Now, on the other hand, Russia has planned a direct shot to the moon, not around the Earth first, circuitous route, but straight line to the moon. And now, in this particular approach, it is rather risky because it can miss the moon, and secondly, it is costlier.
All right, many thanks to you, Dr. Naik, for so eloquently explaining all those nitty-gritties to us. North Korea is finally breaking its silence over the US soldier in its custody. We'll tell you all about it, but after a short break, stay tuned to World 360.